some action in the United States Senate yesterday and into last night. They passed the Johnson bill to fund the government, so the showdown is over. It's not going to happen. They failed to stop Biden's U.S. student loan income-driven repayment plan. There it is. And I say that because my next guest is looking to join the United States Senate, and that's important. The Club of 100 needs reform, and Dr. Sherry O'Donnell is running to replace Debbie Stabenow, who has certainly not served the state well at all, but served the interests of Michigan Democrats and the Biden administration. Physician, pastor, author, mission leader, speaker, former congressional candidate for Michigan's 5th District, Dr. Sherry O'Donnell joins me now. Doctor, great to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here, Dave, and good morning to you.
Good morning. All right. You say you're the cure for Michigan, so let's talk about what ails Michigan and how you will be part of that cure. I just mentioned a couple of Senate actions yesterday. There will be much to do. The long-running, long-held seats on both sides in the United States Senate, the Club of 100, as I like to call it, is why it is, for the large part, not really the world's greatest deliberative body, but just the let's make a deal body. So what are your thoughts on the Senate, and what are your top-line goals if elected to the Senate?
Thank you, Dave. And yeah, a Club of 100 has to be stopped. We need to dismantle all that is going on right now. Michigan was just treated between our wicked trio with Nessel and Gretchen Whitmer, who responded the worst that any other governor across the United States has. We just have to stop that. As the next U.S. Senator, first off, I'm going to represent we the people. I am not a politician. I am a physician, and I have served my patients for the past 23 and a half years. I will continue to serve the people. We're ready for a fresh start, not another recycled politician. Recycling is for plastic, not for politicians. We need to get back to getting Michigan back on the map again. During COVID, our economy not only did the economy drop, but our educational system dropped. We're in the pitiful part of the ranking right now in Michigan for the education. So we need to get back to some common sense, and there's not much common sense right now.
All right, let's work through some key issues. Your medical credentials are well substantiated, the experience you have, and that can be very valuable when dealing with things like the pandemic that we just came through and the political decisions, the policy decisions. But let's move on to some other things. Economics, the economic foundation. You know, you talk about Gretchen Whitmer and Debbie Stabenow, the Michigan, I'll use the term leadership with air quotes, and the failures economically in that state, at all levels for that matter. So let's talk economics and where you stand on key issues. The printing of money by the federal government, inflation, and even given this latest deal, you know, while they keep trying in some cases, we never get proper fiscal policy out of the United States Senate.
No, Dave, we don't, and we need a balanced budget. The only reason this most recently passed last night even was because they want to go on Thanksgiving vacation. As senator, I support a balanced budget. As a business owner, Dave, I own my own practice. The hospital has wanted to buy my practice for decades, but I own my own practice. If I ran my business aspect of my medical practice like we in the government run it, I wouldn't be in practice. I wouldn't have a business. I'm going to bring those business skills to office, and I plan on working on towards a balanced budget. We need to unpack some of the bills that are there, some of the pork that's in each of these bills, and that other things are passed when it shouldn't because it's part of a larger bill. We need to stop the funding of the Ukrainian war. We need to stop the funding that is not in America's best interest.
On the issues of one bill, one vote, and the dodge in the Senate is the cloture vote versus the floor vote, where do you stand?
I think we need to disassemble some of the bills that are toppled on top of one another. And when you put a 3,000-page bill in place, no one's going to actually dissect that and take that apart. We need to be at one bill so that the people know what they're voting on, the senators and Congress know what the bill is actually calling for, and not packaging it. The problem with that, I know, is the lobbyists would like to have some other things tucked in there. So here, just pass this. While you're doing that, I think there needs to be unpackaged.
All right, let's talk about tax policy. Now, you've signed the No New Taxes pledge. That's good. That's a good indicator, and you're running for this seat. But tax policy, and you talk about running your own business and small business, but not just business tax policy, but domestically, but also tax policy internationally and business policy. What would you support in the form of tariffs against bad actors, or doing, what is required to reshore more American companies and jobs by changing tax policy and, for that matter, where possible, regulatory policy?
I think we need to truly make America great again and bring back businesses to the United States. I think what's happening with China right now, I'd absolutely tariff, and make it much more difficult for them to sell their products in America. And I would be doing that as a point of leverage. We've got to have some leverage against companies that are in our country, and we also need to have incentive to bring American countries back to our soil.
All right, let's talk term limits. My guest, Dr. Sherry O'Donnell, running for Senate in Michigan. Her website, DocSherry2024.com. I think back to Senator Bill Frist, and I remember asked him the question when he was running, and Bill said to me, I'm going to do 2 terms, and I'm going back to being Dr. Bill Frist. Term limits, what will you pledge to the people on term limits for your time in Washington? And would it be something like what Bill Frist did and carried out?
Dave, I think it's criminal when we see senators dying in office at age 90, and D.C. looks a lot like a nursing home inclusive of our president. I think our forefathers intended shorter terms that the public sector would go into D.C., serve the people, and get back out. Our current limitation on our current term is 6 years for Senate. I would certainly consider and hold myself to 2. And I think that's where we need to be. One of the things that concern me a little bit is, could I be persuaded into 3 when we look at senators like Ted Cruz and the work that he's doing? Yes. But I would say certainly I'm going to hold myself to no more than 2, because at that point in time, what you have is a lobbyist running D.C. and not the people that we elected, not the elected officials that we send to office, but rather the lobbyists and those special interest groups.